top. Okay. Hello everyone and welcome. This is Abertay University and the Abertay Ethical Hacking Society's contribution to the ADA Scotland Festival. We're just going to be talking today about the diversity of careers in cybersecurity and talking about our own pathways, how we've ended up where we are in cybersecurity. So first of all, just a quick introduction, really just kind of saying who we are. So my name's Natalie Cool. I'm head of the Cybersecurity division at Abertay University. So I'm a lecturer. I teach students on both our undergraduate and our postgraduate degrees in ethical hacking, computing, and do some teaching to our game students as well. So my background, I've got a PhD in technology enhanced education for software development, where I was looking at how we can learn from sort of good practices that we are able to kind of witness in experts, and how we can then try and develop those practices in novice programmers. So this then led to my research interests in secure software development, but kind of looking at it from the reverse in terms of how we can look at bad programming practices that lead to security vulnerabilities and how we can educate programmers to make sure that they don't make these same mistakes. I'm also interested in looking at research around digital watermarks, so how we can use things like steganographic techniques to try and cut down on video piracy, and also some computer memory-based security concerns as well. So just a very kind of brief introduction to me, and I'll hand over now to Sarah.
So hello, my name is Cedar Cunningham. So obviously, like Natalie said, I'm part of our kind of ethical hacking sort of society and stuff like that. So I'm a fourth year student at Abertay studying ethical hacking. I'm also the president of our hacking society, where we have about 140 to kind of 150 members. So we've got quite a lot of us, ranging from ethical hacking students to computing students, and even some people in other universities as well. I've actually got a background in desktop engineering and hardware, so I kind of started off with more of a hands-on kind of getting to know what a computer is like before I moved even anywhere close onto security. But my sort of interests within cybersecurity now are more the kind of laws and regulations, and I quite like the human kind of people side of it, where you actually get to talk to kind of companies and organisations.
Can I ask you, Sarah, if you just go back a slide to those pictures? So I really like that bit at the top there. We do not fail, we succeed in finding out what does not work. I think that really kind of sums up a lot of my life. I really like that. And that picture at the bottom, where are you there? What are you actually doing?
So that was actually part of a cyber tour that we done. So this was through the cyber bus kind of event that we done, where we basically done a tour around Scotland to different small businesses and enterprises. And that was actually part of a whiskey company. So we were actually in their offices. And what was quite good about it was that we actually got to go for a wee distillery tour afterwards. But we taught them about phishing campaigns and kind of actually got them to write their own phishing emails and stuff like that to learn how that they're kind of made and done. And then the one at the top was actually me in a primary school, which is something we've done loads of times, but we go to different primary schools and high schools, and there we were actually teaching them about a man-in-the-middle attack, which was actually, it was so much fun. I feel like you get so much engagement out of kids when you do these kind of talks and events.
Oh, it's great to see, though, just examples of you kind of going out into the, whether it's, you know, community-based in terms of the primary schools, or more with, you know, the business side of things as well, in terms of going into a whiskey company. Must have been quite cool, although disappointed to see that looks like cups of tea and coffee.
It was, sadly. It was a unique experience. We went to so many different companies when we done this tour. We even ended up in with things like B&B owners, and we went from things like this kind of small B&B owner to a massive distillery company and stuff like that. But it was actually the event that we'd done a similar one with high schools, and with kind of, it was probably about 14 to 16-year-olds, and it was really strange to see the mindset of these younger kids versus adults was actually exactly the same. Like, all the questions that we asked, we got the same answers from these kids as we did people working. So it was quite an interesting experience.
Cool. So was that where you kind of got on the minibus and you went and drove around
Yeah.
North Coast, wasn't it?
Yeah,
For
we ended up
Inverness.
spending 4 days. So we went all the way up to John O'Groats, and then kind of we ended up pointing it out on a map, and we literally started in Dundee and went the whole way up and round. It was an intense few days, but it was great. I don't think I've sat in a van for so long before though. I
Cool.
felt bad for the guy that we were with because we were pretty much playing the same few songs over and over again. Just to,
Like a nice little road trip.
yeah.
Yeah, you probably never imagined that you would end up doing something like that when you started off, studying in this field, which I think kind of leads on quite nicely to what we're going to talk about now, which is the jobs in cybersecurity and just the diversity of different, career paths that exist in the cybersecurity domain.
So I think we put up a few examples here of kind of different jobs within cybersecurity, because I think even yourself, Natalie, will know of when someone says to you, like, what is cybersecurity or what is a job in cybersecurity, you could spend an hour talking to them about different jobs and different aspects. And it's even something that for a lot of the students that come up, you're always told, like, you need, like, everyone's can be good at everything and stuff like that. And we always like to ensure to people that, look, don't worry if you're not good at this one aspect of cyber, because realistically there's so many other areas. So for example, I'm not the best at coding, but I know that that's not one of my strongest points, but I'm good at the laws, I'm good at digital forensics, I'm good at the kind of hardware stuff. And this kind of shows you a few examples here of the kind of jobs that you get.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make, Sarah, that I think, for a long time, this field has suffered from that stereotype of what it means to be in cybersecurity, and certainly the kind of hacker stereotype as well, in terms of, what makes somebody good or successful in cybersecurity. And we think about it in terms of somebody who works quite isolated, who just kind of works away in their bedroom and doesn't speak to other people, and they just like to kind of bash away at the keyboard. So certainly that's one of the things that we want to try and address today, is that is absolutely not the case at all. There are so many different things that you can do in cybersecurity with lots and lots of different skills, and being good at coding or enjoying programming is certainly not necessarily one of them.
And it's one thing that you see a lot of students kind of worry about when they first come up is, I've not done this before, I've not done that. And it's the, don't worry if you've not done it, because you'll learn it. And even like, you know yourself again, Natalie, that so many people even get to fourth year and still think, I don't know what I want to do, because there's so many options.
Yeah, spoiled for choice. So I think we've got quite a few different examples here, which you can see from, right from security software developer, incident responder, security architect. There's so many different job titles out there that all really kind of come under the cybersecurity banner. We can talk about a few more of these in detail.
So what we kind of done here was that you'll even notice from the kind of examples before that a lot of them are kind of similar but slightly different. So we've taken what we think are the kind of four main headings of kind of cybersecurity jobs. So the first one starts with kind of penetration testing / kind of consulting. So this is typically working with companies. It can be anything from that kind of smaller companies to bigger ones. A lot of the time it's quite technical stuff. So it could be website pen testing, it could be network, it could be kind of basically just walking into a company and just testing whatever they need you to do. And this is referred to as kind of legal hacking or ethical hacking, where you're using hacking techniques, but in a legal way, because before you even get in the company, you've got a contract written out of kind of what is your scope of the project. And a lot of this is, some of the times it's not actually just technical kind of work. Even the examples that we were talking about earlier, when I was actually in the whiskey distillery, that could be considered as consulting, because we went in and taught them about penetration testing and about kind of phishing emails and stuff like that, and taught them about basic ethical hacking. That was us providing them the service and teaching them, kind of informing them more about it.
That's good. So from a development perspective as well, I think that some people typically think that cybersecurity, looking at it from an ethical hacker's perspective, is just about breaking things. which ultimately is a part of cybersecurity, and it's a very interesting part of cybersecurity. But some people are really keen to have a career where they're just developing software. They want to build systems. And this is very much a really important part of cybersecurity as well, where we can look at how we can make sure that those systems are developed or created to be secure. So we need to make sure that the next generation of software developers, system engineers know how to construct systems with that kind of good understanding of cybersecurity and how a malicious hacker might come along and exploit a vulnerability, so that they can then make sure that those systems are built to be secure from the ground up. So there's a lot of legacy systems out there where they were created at a time where people really didn't kind of understand cybersecurity, and there wasn't really kind of good discussion going on within organizations about it. And also some companies are under tremendous pressure to, create a bit of software and get it out to market as quickly as they can. And often their priority in terms of what developers will spend their time doing will be focused on just making sure that you can, get it running, that it meets the client's needs so that it can just be kind of released as soon as possible. And, for a long time, I think security was considered as an afterthought. It was only if they had time left over or budget that they might then think about, okay, let's see if we can maybe find any bugs or make sure that perhaps it can't be compromised in any way. And what
saying that I like actually is that it was, I can't even remember who it was that had told me, but it was the begin with security in mind, because it's so much harder to implement it at the end of a project, because a lot of the times you'll end up ripping up everything that you've done just to implement security. So
yeah,
that
absolutely.
in mind, and your whole project will go so much better.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's like trying to, make your house energy efficient, after it's built, that it's so much easier if it's kind of built from the beginning with that mindset. So certainly, there's a lot of kind of job opportunities out there for people who are interested in that kind of secure coding, about designing systems to be secure as well, and a lot of potential as well for people to have a kind of breadth of skills across different languages as well, to look at creating secure systems. So the next one that we want to cover as well, so we can think about cybersecurity in terms of that development piece really kind of comes at the beginning of a system's creation. And then digital forensics is something that I suppose comes at the end. So after there might have been perhaps an attack on a system, or maybe an insider within an organization has used the system in a way that wasn't intended, or we think there's been some kind of breach. And there's a lot of job opportunities for people to work in that digital forensics domain, where they'll be working perhaps as an investigator to try and find out, okay, can we understand maybe how the system was compromised? How did somebody manage to get access to it? Or, can we look at certain log files and things to see if we can understand what that kind of pattern of behavior was? Can we identify who was logged into the machine at the time that we think the incident occurred? What were they doing? Have they managed to access, say, customer credit card details? To what extent are we going to have to alert people to the fact that we think that there's been an incident here? A useful thing that can come out of that digital forensics investigation is then kind of feeding back into, okay, what can we then learn about how the system was compromised, so we can then feed that back to the development phase in terms of saying, right, let's make sure that the next generation of systems don't have these same vulnerabilities. But there's also a lot of scope as well, where, if you think about this from a criminal perspective, where a lot of crimes nowadays might involve some kind of digital element, whether it's somebody had a mobile phone that might contain useful information on it, or if somebody was Googling, where can I hide a body easily around the Dundee area. These are all kind of things that a digital forensics expert might be tasked with looking at on somebody's phone or laptop or Xbox to see if they can help to build a case there. So this is some of the skills that are really useful here is somebody who is particularly good or enjoys that kind of problem solving aspect in terms of just looking through lots and lots of data to try and look at the bigger picture. So the scope for job opportunities here from a public perspective in terms of working with the police force, but also from a private perspective as well. A lot of companies will either work with organisations to help them do a digital forensics investigation when the company itself has been compromised. It might not warrant a police investigation, but they would certainly want to be able to go to an expert and say, look, can you help us figure out what's gone wrong here? We've been, we're suffering from some kind of an attack and we need to understand how they've been able to get in. Over to you, Sarah, for the last one.
Yeah, so the last one's kind of research and compliance. So I would say one thing about all these sections that you get is you'll actually notice a lot of people don't fit perfectly within what this is. So I would probably say that myself and Natalie are more, at this moment in time, we probably fit more into the kind of research and compliance side, obviously with Natalie being a lecturer and myself kind of looking in more the kind of law and procedure side of ethical hacking. Although Natalie's background goes quite a lot over into kind of development and stuff like that with...
You're trying to say I'm old, Sarah?
No, because I was about to say, I think as well with myself, I would say that I kind of, at least at the start of our course as well, obviously I originally started in more hardware kind of side of hacking, and I actually quite enjoyed the hardware hacking stuff. But then kind of as the course went on, I got quite a big interest in sort of penetration testing. But now that I'm in kind of fourth year and getting to the end of my uni degree, I've kind of now found myself more on the compliance side. So I think it's something that you notice is that you don't fit in perfectly to, I am good at this one thing, or I fit into only digital forensics or only research and stuff like that. But I'd say that when you come to the research and compliance section, it is more about that kind of lecturing, public speaking. A lot of the times it's people facing kind of jobs. So even if it's working in a company and you are part of the kind of security compliance team, most of the times it'll be you actually physically walking over to a department, sitting down with them and maybe doing risk analysis or kind of going over what kind of potential risks they have. And a lot of the times, even it could be walking into a board meeting and proposing a bit of kind of security software that you need and trying to kind of get money from the companies. And working with companies as well can be quite difficult, where a lot of the times in security, you're asking for money. And it is found quite a lot is that you're saying, we need this bit of pen testing software, we need this bit of auditing software, we need this, we need that. And a lot of the times you can be asking for money and companies are kind of like, well, why do we need it? Because you don't need security until something goes wrong. And you notice it all the time as people are like, well, we don't need that. But as soon as they have a data breach, it's like, actually, do you know what? We could have used that. So a lot of the times these jobs are quite public facing and they're kind of talking to people. Same with the kind of research side. We say that a lot of people don't realise you actually have to be quite good at English at times when you're in these jobs, because you do a lot of writing, even with pen testing and kind of digital forensics. You're writing a lot of reports that will get handed to a potential client, will get handed to your manager, and you need to be able to get your thoughts out on that bit of paper, or else all the work you've done is completely pointless.
It could be English with a Scottish accent though, that's okay.
Definitely. We just have to hope that people can understand us. But yeah, those I think for us were the kind of main four headings that you are going to kind of come under.
Okay, we thought it might be quite interesting now if we kind of move on and have more of a sort of discussion piece where Sarah and I just kind of have a chat about how we've got where we are and really what it's like for us, what sort of things we do on a day-to-day basis. So I wondered, Sarah, if you could really just kind of tell us a bit about how you ended up getting into ethical hacking. What made you choose to study ethical hacking at university?
So I think it's the same as kind of probably a lot of people are feeling just now, of cyber's becoming more and more kind of in your face and you're starting to learn about it a lot more. I think for myself at the time, that obviously, like I said, I came from quite a hardware background, so I've always been interested in computers. When I was younger, I got into hardware because I was quite a destructive child. I liked to kind of rip things apart, and I broke every toy that I got. But my dad used to actually build and kind of repair PCs for people. He doesn't do it now because he always says that the times have changed too much. What he knew when he was younger massively changed. But a lot of the time, so there was one time that he got a broken computer and he was like, take it and just play with it. He was like, take it apart and put it back together. So for him, it was almost a way of teaching me to be less destructive, was take it apart, but then put it back together. So that's how I kind of got into the hardware side. And then it was kind of when I got to first year of high school, kind of start of high school, I realised that I was quite paranoid when it came to things like letting people on my phone or passwords and stuff like that. I was the kind of person that I'd be horrified when my dad told me that he's got the same password for every single thing. And I was always quite a paranoid person when it came to stuff like that. And I think subconsciously I was quite security conscious. And it actually just came from, I was looking at different courses that I could go on, because I actually originally considered doing games, because I thought I like playing video games, that sounds like fun, till I realised how much maths was in it. And then I ended up, because I was already looking at Abertay, I found this ethical hacking course and I was like, all right, I was like, that looks a bit odd, but I was like, it kind of makes sense because I'm already quite security conscious. Like, this sounds like it could be quite a good career to go into. And that's kind of where I started, is I started very much from a different perspective of kind of more hardware and even video games and stuff like that. And then
so did you do computing at school?
I did, yeah. So my school actually didn't offer higher computing or advanced higher. So I done up to National 5, and then I had to actually go to a different school just for higher computing, which was a bit of a nightmare because I had to get 2 buses to get there. But for me, it was completely worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I done up to only higher computing, and then obviously came into Abertay afterwards, which I think a lot of people think as well, do you need to have advanced higher computing to get into the kind of ethical hacking and computing courses, which you definitely don't, because you kind of get a good, yeah, even our industry and kind of community in general are quite helpful. I think is one thing I like is that we're not part of a competitive kind of industry. See the way that maybe doctors or kind of a lot of even law and stuff like that, a lot of the times it's you're trying to get ahead to get the best job or get this, that, and the next thing. For us, it's quite a community of people that are all willing to help each other. So even though I didn't have things like advanced higher computing behind me, I picked it up really quickly.
Yeah, I think that's it's one of the things that I often say to people I really like about being a lecturer in the cybersecurity domain, is that there is a tremendous sense of community that I just don't really think that you get with other subject areas. And it's interesting that point you made as well about just students helping other students. So in programming class that I teach, for example, to first year students, we've got some students there who have maybe done an HND already, and maybe they've come into first year to do games if they haven't got maths, for example. So they've already got quite a lot of programming experience. That they're already kind of very comfortable using C++ and object orientation. And then we might have somebody who's maybe attended a school where they weren't even able to offer computing as a subject area. So they know that they're interested in it, but they've not actually been able to do any formal qualifications in it. And it's really nice actually to just kind of see how students are just so kind of happy to kind of come together and help each other with things as well. So yeah, I think that's a really nice point that you made. So it's quite interesting as well. So you said that you remember way back in first year that you really liked, well, even as earlier than that, breaking things. Yeah, when we were speaking about the jobs, you were saying that you've kind of moved away from that penetration testing aspect, which I see as being breaking things, to more a skill set that's kind of focused on people and communication. So it's just quite kind of interesting to see how what maybe initially got you into this subject area is now something that you've kind of identified, your own strengths and what you really enjoy, to see how you can kind of identify your own career path through there.
I do think that's what I was even saying before. You don't really fit into one area when you look at even any job in kind of technology, computing, stuff like that. You find that you do move quite a bit around it. And that's even for me, it was very much I started more with the kind of hardware breaking, kind of that side of it, but then you get an appreciation for it. And then for me, I then use the skills that I've got, because you'll notice that even going into security management and stuff like that, and even I've had a few different jobs now within information security since I've been at uni, and I've always noticed that throughout it, a lot of the times you deal with managers that never had a technical background, and a lot of it will be, in theory, let's do this, let's implement this security thing. And you always need to stop and say, but realistically, our users might not be able to catch on to this. Or see things like, the best security that you could have in a company is change your password every week. But realistically, you're not going to change your password every week. I can barely remember changing my passwords all the time. So it's quite good having a background where you can actually say, well, I've done this sort of practically and know that it's not actually going to work that way. So for me, it's having the appreciation of breaking things has now made me actually appreciate more building them back up and kind of laying the foundations and kind of groundwork for a lot of this kind of stuff now.
That's good. I was wondering as well, so I mean, we've not really kind of mentioned the whole kind of female woman in cybersecurity thing, but I think it's kind of worth acknowledging the fact that women are in the minority in cybersecurity. And I'm just wondering really, how have you found that yourself? So as a student where you are in the classroom where, you know, there's obviously more men than women, do you find it difficult? Do you find that you maybe have to work harder to prove yourself as a woman? What's it been like?
So I think we're in quite a unique kind of experience, especially at Abertay and stuff like that, of obviously having yourself as the head of the division, which is a female, and a lot of our lecturers are actually female as well. I think we're quite unique that our classes are quite diverse in a way of, there are certainly less women in the course, but we've got a really big kind of LGBTQ sort of community as well. But I actually don't think you notice a lot of the times that there's less women. And I always like to joke saying that the women that we have certainly make up for the kind of lack of women that we've got, is that a lot of us are quite strong personalities, and we certainly don't let anyone kind of talk down to us or anything like that. But I think it's something that, even if I don't experience it as much, it is something that is there in companies and in kind of universities and even in high school and stuff like that. I know in high school I was the only one in my higher computing class that was a girl, but I was also 1,000 times better than most of the guys that were in the class. So a lot of the times people would still come to me and ask questions and stuff like that. It was actually, I think I've told you this story before, but it'll be good for everyone else to hear, is that I worked for a car company and done desktop engineering for them. And I was the first girl to have pretty much ever worked in that kind of department before. And when we were looking at getting new uniform and stuff like that, we had it on our intranet. So they were like, oh, just go on and order whatever you need. And as soon as I went on, it was the typical black polo shirt and black kind of cargo trousers. But I looked at it and I've never had to order guys' trousers before, so didn't realise that it's in like inches and leg length and stuff like that. But ended up ordering the uniform. It showed up and I looked and was like, there is no way I can wear this. And they were like, oh, but it's unisex uniform. And I was like, no, it's not. I was like, this is guys' uniform. It's definitely not made for women. And for me, that was quite a funny situation where almost they didn't even think about the fact that women need different uniform than guys do. Yeah, but in that case, it actually worked out quite well for me, because I got to wear black jeans instead of these horrendous cargo trousers, which I think they were all quite jealous about. But I think certainly, see, 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot more kind of a gap between the girls that are in our industry and kind of the amount of girls that they're even wearing classes and companies and stuff like that. But I think now it's a lot more common to see girls in the classroom and stuff like that. And I honestly don't see there being a big kind of gap. And like I said, even the girls that are in the cybersecurity industry that you see on Twitter and that you see even on the news, you've got things like Dr. Jessica Barker, who is constantly on the news. Like, she seems to be the face of cybersecurity. And you've even got things like Holly Graceful, and there's a lot of people that, again, like I said, the women that there are, even if we're lacking slightly, we make up for it. Yeah. Because there's so many good kind of people that you can look up to.
Yeah, I think that's worth thinking about as well, is that stereotype that people have about, you know, the kind of the geek who just wants to sit in their bedroom and bash away at the keyboard is not the reality of the people that actually live and work in the community. And it is actually an incredibly diverse community that's very welcoming. I saw on Twitter the other day, there was a lot of tweets about somebody from the community who died recently, and there was tweets just saying, he was one of us. And I think that's something that I do see with the cybersecurity community as well, is we do see ourselves as just kind of one big family, and it really doesn't matter what gender you are or what your strengths are. You're welcome, and there's a place for you here as well.
I don't know if you've ever found in your kind of role of obviously being the head of the division, have you ever found anyone maybe even look down on you a wee bit or not realise?
I've can honestly put my hand on my heart and say that I've never experienced that. So I studied computing at school, where obviously, naturally there was more boys in the classroom than there was girls. But like you've said as well, I never felt that the guys were like, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about, or you don't know what you're doing because you're a girl. Likewise, when I then came to university, again, was very much in the minority, I think even more so than I had been at school. But the guys were just like, yeah, well, just can you help me with this program? And very much, a lot of my friends when I was at university were guys, just because that was who I was in the class with. And then throughout my career as well as a lecturer, I've never experienced any situation where I've felt that somebody's looked down on me in my position because I'm female.
I think it's actually, obviously I mentioned before that I'm the president of our hacking society, and I've been quite fortunate that this is my 3rd year on this society. So I've been treasurer, vice president, I'm now up at president, but my past 2 years before, it was actually quite a neutral kind of committee that we had. So in my 1st year, there was 2 guys and 2 girls. And then in my 2nd year on the committee, there was actually 3 girls and 1 guy, which for our course, obviously, naturally there are less girls on our course, but for that, and 3 of the committee members actually being women, I thought was quite interesting. And then even now, the committee that I'm on, I'm the only girl, and I've got 3 other boys that are on the committee with me. But I would never say that I've had any situation where almost they've thought that they could be above me, or thought that they had more of an opinion than I did. And if anything, it's kind of the opposite of times, of the amount of times that they ask me like, oh, is this okay? Is that okay? Like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I think it's a good perspective that you get, because even for us, within our society and our committee and stuff like that, you've got 2 extremes of, you've got the guys that are still on the committee that make other guys in the course feel welcome, because you'll probably even notice as well, Natalie, at times, see when you've got kind of younger students coming up that have just came out of school, they can still be a bit shy and a bit unsure of what's going on, and it can be quite intimidating if you've got this girl coming up to you straight away being like, hi, who are you, and talking to you and stuff like that. So for us, it's quite a nice balance of having the guys there, but also still having the girls on the committee.
Yeah, definitely.
You've still got someone to talk to and someone to kind of reach out to.
Yeah, and I think certainly last year when there was the 3 females and 1 guy on the committee, and it's just so nice to see that the guys, obviously the majority of students are male, but they had no hesitation in voting for female officers, because they don't see your gender, they just see the skill set that you've got and go, right, well they're the right person for that particular role, so I'm happy to vote for them.
Yeah,
which is good. I'm conscious that we're kind of whittering on here, and we could probably do it all day, Sarah, but I just wanted to kind of sum up by saying, I hope that that's given you some sort of insight into the diversity of careers that exist in cybersecurity, and also an idea to think about the conversations that we've had around what it's like being a student in cybersecurity, and for myself as a lecturer in cybersecurity. There's so much scope here, potential for people to find a really rewarding career here. We just wanted to finish up. Sarah's found a really nice quote actually that we thought you might want to read before we let you go and get on about your day.
But yeah, so the summary of this quote is basically don't be shy of who you are, and kind of that being a woman in tech and a woman in the sort of cybersecurity industry, a lot of the times you can maybe feel yourself maybe not being willing to speak out as much, but it's don't worry, like your ideas are good, of if you don't speak out and say, this is a thought that I've had, or this is what I feel, this is what I think, people aren't going to know. And you're never being braggy. Even saying like, oh, I've done this really cool project that I'm really proud of. It's not you bragging about what you've done. It's not you trying to say, oh, look how good of a person that I am and how amazing I am. It's everyone does it. Everyone can be proud of what they've done. So don't kind of let the fact that you're a woman in this industry kind of stop you from anything that you want to do. Kind of that, be confident and be proud of who you are, and never kind of let anyone talk over you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.